Okay, so here we are. We are back again. This is the second part of our digestive system PowerPoint. So we just finished the mouth. Now we are going to move on down to the next organ, which I guess is going to be the pharynx or the throat. We know that from the respiratory system. Okay, so from our mouth, after we've taken the food into our mouth, we have started chewing it, breaking it down with our teeth, and we form it into what's called a bolus. And the bolus is just a mass of food mixed with saliva. Okay? So with our tongue, then we're going to help move that food to the back of our throat, or the oropharynx, okay, to initiate a swallow. So it's going to go through the oropharynx, down through the laryngopharynx, and then into the esophagus. Okay? The epiglottis is going to cover the flap to the trachea, therefore making sure that the food goes directly into the esophagus, which will take it down into the stomach. Okay? So the esophagus then consists of two layers of skeletal muscles that are going to contract, and they propel the food downward. It's a slow moving process. It's a wave-like process where it kind of goes like this, okay, to move that food down like you can see on your screen, and that's called peristalsis. Okay. Now, I put this little video in here for you that shows the food from the time you put it into your mouth, from chewing it up to swallowing it. It shows you how the flap covers the trachea, so it directs the food down through the esophagus and down into the stomach. That you can watch on your own time. This is another video which is really very cool. This is an endoscopic view of the esophagus, and it shows you how that peristalsis works and the waves. You can see it in the camera. It looks very cool. Also, for you to watch on your own time. Okay, so now we enter into the stomach. So the stomach is a C-shaped organ. It sits towards the left side of the abdominal cavity. Once the food passes down through the esophagus, it has to go through the lower esophageal sphincter, also known as the cardiac sphincter. If you remember from MedTerm, sphincter is a ring-like muscle. Okay. Move this up a little bit. It's a ring-like muscle that kind of has to open to allow the food to pass from the esophagus into the stomach. Now, the cardiac sphincter isn't exactly a true, by definition, sphincter. It's actually the diaphragm. Because if you remember, the diaphragm is right under the lungs. Okay, the diaphragm is actually what divides the thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity, and it kind of surrounds the esophagus. So the diaphragm is more of what kind of controls the food as it passes through. It isn't, like I said, by definition, a sphincter muscle that opens and closes. Okay. So once it passes through that cardiac sphincter, then you're going to enter into the fundus, which is the top part of the stomach. Okay. From the fundus, it goes down into the body of the stomach. Okay. This is more the bulk of the stomach, okay, where all the food collects. As it passes through the bulk of the stomach, or the body of the stomach, it's going to start to become more narrow. As it narrows, that portion is called the pyloric antrum. The pyloric antrum is going to lead to the pylorus, which is the very end part of the stomach. Okay. It kind of funnels. It funnels down like a funnel would, from larger to smaller, until it gets to the pylorus. Okay. The pylorus then is going to meet at the pyloric sphincter, which actually is a sphincter or a ring-like muscle. The pyloric sphincter is going to control the amount of food that leaves the stomach and enters into the very first part of the small intestines, or the duodenum. Okay, so it's kind of like It's kind of like the gate that opens, allows small amounts of food to go through, and then closes, because we only want small amounts to go through at a time. Okay. We'll talk about that more when we get to the small intestines. So within the stomach, within the body of the stomach itself, if you were to open the stomach up, you would see all these folds, like folds of skin, and they're called rugae, or rugae. You hear it pronounced both ways. And basically what that does is allows the stomach to expand, or it increases surface area in the stomach. And then when the stomach shrinks again and contracts, those folds get all wrinkled up. As they expand, they open up and smooth out. Okay, so it allows for you to eat and expand your stomach, like at Thanksgiving when everybody's got a really, really full, big stomach. Okay, those rugae are what allow that your stomach to expand that much. Okay. Now, the stomach is curved. Like I said, it's C-shaped. Okay, so it has two curves. So the larger outer curve is called the greater curvature. Okay, that's a convex curve. You're going to see a picture of it in a second. The smaller concave curve, which is on the medial side, is called the lesser curvature. You can also look at them as the outer curvature or the greater curvature, and the inner curvature or the lesser curvature. Okay, so here we have it. So this would be the outer or the greater curvature. This would be the inner or the lesser curvature. Okay. All right, so here's the esophagus coming down into where it meets the stomach. So this is the cardiac sphincter. This would be where the diaphragm would come across. Okay, right here. Here's the fundus, or the top portion of the stomach, and it moves down into the body of the stomach. This is the different layers of the stomach, which we'll get to in a couple slides. Okay, we're not going to talk about those right here just yet. Okay, so this is a cutout portion. So as you can see inside here are all these rugae. Okay, these are all the folds that will expand, so the stomach can expand. Okay. Then as we start moving this way and things start to narrow, this is the pylorus. This is the pyloric sphincter. Okay, so this is where the stomach ends and the small intestines begins. Okay, this is a little video, again, so you can watch on your own time, because this is a description, again, of the anatomical structure of the stomach with a model that can be taken apart so you can see the inside and the outside. It's only a couple minutes long. Okay, now, so all the organs of the gastrointestinal tract are made up of the same basic layers, or tunics, just like blood vessels. Okay? So there's 4 layers, and we're going to move from innermost layer to the outermost layer. All right? So the innermost layer is called the mucosa. Okay? This is made up of surface epithelium and connective tissue, and it's the innermost layer of the organ. The next layer is the submucosa. This also is connective tissue. This section contains blood vessels, contains nerves, and it contains some lymph tissue. Okay, lymph being part of the immune system. The muscularis is the muscular layer. So, there's an inner circular layer and an outer longitudinal layer of smooth muscles. Remember, this is smooth muscle. This is not voluntary muscle. Okay, we can't tell our stomach muscles. Well, we can tell our stomach muscles, but not the actual organ stomach muscles to contract. Okay, the smooth muscle, that's involuntary muscle. Okay, versus like our abdominal muscles, okay, which are skeletal and those are voluntary. Okay. Then the outermost layer is the serosa. Okay. So again, this has 2 layers, just like the pleura, okay, just like the pericardium. Okay. So there's the visceral peritoneum, which would be the inner layer of the serosa, and then there's the parietal peritoneum, which would be the outer layer of the serosa. And just like the flora has that visceral pleura, parietal pleura. This is the same type of layout. Okay. Okay. All right. So here we go. All right. So here's the picture. So you have your mucosa, which is the innermost layer. Okay. The submucosa comes next. Okay. The submucosa is where you can see the blood vessels, veins, and arteries. Okay. After the submucosa, we have the muscularis. So you have that circular muscular layer, which is this layer, and then you have the longitudinal muscle layer, which is this thicker layer going this direction. Okay. So this is the circular one, this is the longitudinal one. Okay. Then you have that outermost layer, which is here, the serosa. Okay. The inner layer of that serosa would be the visceral. The outer layer of that serosa would be the parietal. Okay. Okay. All right. So the stomach is where most of the food is broken down. Okay. So in addition to that longitudinal layer of muscle and the circular layer of muscle, there's what's called an oblique layer. This is the third layer that exists in the stomach. Okay. This is the muscularis externa. This is the one that allows for that churning movement of the stomach. Okay, that churning movement is what is really going to break that food down into what is called chyme. Okay, and chyme is just a liquidy mush. Okay, what the food gets turned into before we move it down into the small intestine. So our stomach does that churning motion to continually break down that food. We started it in our mouth. Now it's going to finish mechanically breaking it down in the stomach. Okay. Okay. So the mucosa in the stomach is made of simple columnar epithelium, if you can remember back that far. And this produces mucus, okay, within the stomach. All right. So again, here's another picture, a close-up picture of the layers. Starting here with the mucosa, okay, innermost layer, submucosa that contains our veins, arteries, the muscularis externa, okay, which has the muscle layers. Over here you can see this is our oblique layer, our circular layer, and our longitudinal layer. And then here is the serosa, the outermost layer. Okay. And this is where we're going to stop for today's lesson. Okay, we'll pick up with another one tomorrow. We should be able to finish it in 2 more lessons. Thanks, guys. Bye.